Okay, welcome to the WPIAL Blitz Show. My name is Bruce Badgley. Alongside me, as always, Ian McMeans. And Ian, we have a very special guest with us tonight, don't we?
We do. We are honored to have WPIAL champion head coach Tanner Garry from Fort Cherry. Coach Garry joined us a couple years ago on the show. I think it was actually the first year we did the show after Fort Cherry had pulled what was at the time somewhat of an upset over Rochester. They'd had a fairly long losing streak and were starting to turn things around, and now they're WPIAL champions. So it's been an awesome story to follow over a few years. Coach Garry, thanks for joining us and congratulations on the championship.
I appreciate it, guys. Yeah, it's we're just saying, from 4 years ago, and to be here now, after winning that game on Friday, it's been a journey, So I appreciate you guys having me on, and yeah, ready to roll.
Go ahead, Ian.
Oh, yeah. So, speaking of, the journey that your team has been on, as far as even this year goes, last year you lost in the quarterfinals, and a lot of people had picked you to be a contender for the conference title this year, and potentially make a run at the playoffs. But as you went through the offseason, you guys put together, I mean, a team that's scored over 42 points in all but one of your games. Like, it's just been an incredible run you guys have been on this year. Can you talk a bit about just the journey of the season that all led up to the championship game?
Yeah, it's funny. I think it's the job of a coach to worry, a lot. And I think that, I was just talking to my wife about this the other day that, I had some sleepless nights before the season started on, we got to get into the playoffs. Like that was the first, step was, we have a tough conference. What Canevin has coming back. What Cornell has. What Olsh has. Burgestown being a rival, and those games are always going to be competitive. And whenever four teams make it out of a conference, there really wasn't anything guaranteed. So we knew that first step was just getting out of the conference and trying to be hitting at the right, hitting stride at the right times in the season. So, as the season started going along, just started putting together some wins. Obviously the big, can't say turning point, but the one of the biggest moments of the year there was whenever we played Canevin, the first time, and to get that win was just a really pivotal moment, I think, for the kids and the program, and just trying to find ways to keep on getting better after that. And the kids, answered the challenge each and every week, and had a great run there through the playoffs, and obviously capped it off with the WPIAL.
Yeah, and so many times, Coach, that I see teams that such as yourself, that it's such an emotional roller coaster to go through a season. Forget about the physical toll that goes on all the emotions that go in to playing high school football. As you've gone through, now a WPIAL championship, you know, emotions play such a large part. How much emotions are left in the tank, and emotionally, how have you guided this team to this point in the season?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's something that people really don't think about. Is that we're 14 weeks into this, and that's without camp and the summer conditioning that goes into it prior to, and just a lot of preparation and film watching and game planning and walkthroughs, and you do all that to play 48 minutes on a Friday night. It's a lot. It is. And, especially I'm not, looking for, a pat on my back, but, I got the 6-month-old running around, here at home, and a new parent, for the first time. And, that was definitely an adjustment too. But, we have a great staff. I have a great, supporting staff around me as well. The kids have just, answered every challenge we've given them. They believed in the things that we've been coaching since day one. And, I think even further back, than this season, they believed in the things that we've been coaching for the past 4 years. This group that's seniors now were freshmen whenever we first got hired up here. So to see the maturity level that they've kind of gone through and the leaders that they've become, it's really been special to watch.
You guys had, so you mentioned, the community aspect of it too. with the coaching staff and everything else. You guys had one of the most impressive crowds all weekend at Acrisure Stadium, Heinz Field, whatever we want to call it. Just the whole community turning out for a 1A championship game. Like, I think your crowd might have been bigger than some of the 3A, 4A crowds, because it was amazing the amount of people that were there from Fort Cherry.
Yeah, I can't say I'm surprised, to be honest. It's just, it's one of those things that I think the community has been waiting for and eager to experience for a very long time. I mean, obviously the last time we were there being in 2001, and a lot of the players that were on that 2001 team were in the stands for that game, and there to support us. And just, I mean, the scenes that we saw from, going to our semifinals game at South Fayette against Canavan. I mean, the streets through McDonald were lined from, left to right, just with people sending us off. And on the way back home, it was even more people. You're talking about, 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. You got people standing outside in the cold, cheering you on. And then the crowd down there was just amazing. I think that our fans actually rented out the gravel lot down there in Pittsburgh because the gold lot didn't open up early enough for them, for their liking. So there was homemade billboards that were, being taken down there on trailers, and just, it was amazing. It really was, to come out of the tunnel and look over there and see, the sea of red. It was special.
Yeah, and so now obviously you're in uncharted territory. You've never been here, or maybe not. I don't know if through another school or whatever like that you were coaching, that you made it into the PIAA, but now you're in uncharted territory. I mean, are you drawing on some of friends, colleagues on what to do and how to prepare? And, to deal with everything that swirls around, being in the PIAA championship.
Yeah, it's definitely a new experience. It's new for the school, obviously. For myself, my first year coaching was actually in 2017, and when I was over at South Fayette, and we made it to this point. We played Erie Cathedral Prep, in the week after the Heinz Field game. And, I remember very, very vividly, people talking about the, I think they call it the Heinz hangover, or, the drop off that happens there. Sometimes it's kind of hard to find the motivation again. And it's something that we've talked about with the kids. As soon as that game ended, we understood that, I'd be lying if I said that whenever this season started, we were talking about a state championship. It just really wasn't, something that was really quite on our radar. I think that everyone on the staff knew that we had a chance to make a run, at the WPIAL and get to that position. So we've just been talking about reframing our goals and understanding that we got to a point that we wanted to get to, but now we have to, be a mature enough team to say that, we still have some football left to play, and you have to, find ways to remain aggressive and hungry and, eager to get better still.
Yeah. And is there a lot of, when you get to this point in the season, is there a lot of self-scouting that goes on with your team, so that, you try not to be so predictable, and or try and give teams, different looks from, your basic plays?
Yeah, I think I was talking with one of our local newspapers earlier today, and they were asking a pretty similar thing. And I think that, the first thing that came to mind for me is it's a yes and no, because I think that a lot of the teams that make it to this point understand that they got to this point with a certain formula or recipe that, has been successful for them. So obviously there's things that you're going to rely on and lean on and continue to use, just because it's what got you there. The old, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But at the same time, you can't become, complacent with the things that have gotten you there. You got to keep on trying to find ways to improve and, be, multifaceted, and just trying to find ways to always keep people guessing. I think that in a semifinal state game, it's no secret what teams are good at. You could tell that from watching the film, but trying to find new ways to get to the same things, I think is part of the process there.
So how much fun is it to just watch Matt Seg play? I mean, I earlier this year on the show, I called him like the Shohei Otani of the WPIAL because I
Yeah.
feel like every time you see a stat line or something, it's like this has never been done before, and he's only a sophomore, and like
Yeah.
every highlight I see, I'm like, it's got to be so much fun to just watch this kid play.
Yeah, I think what people actually miss out on that don't have a chance to see him in person is, I've said this for 2 years now, is to me, I think some of the most impressive plays that he has aren't the big long touchdown runs, but the 3 yard gains that should have been a 5 yard loss. The way he's able to just make plays happen, just in between all the big plays, I think is what really makes him special. Whenever you're playing a team, perfect example like Southside, it's hard to have plays that go backwards, and you because now you're a little bit off script, and you have to start trying to force things that you typically aren't doing. And Matt does a great job of always making sure that we're still in the plus territory with our down and distance. But the things that he's able to do, both with his arms and his legs, it's fun to watch. And each week he continues to get better, which is a scary thought, because I think that it was a discussion that a lot of us had last year as a freshman. It was, it's kind of hard to picture the kid as a senior with the way that he's, improving week in and week out. So he's fun to watch. We're happy he's wearing our school colors. I'll tell you that. But he makes a lot of what we do a lot easier. He makes me look like a genius sometimes, and I think I'm doing just what a lot of people would be doing. Sometimes you don't have to overthink it. Just get your best athletes the ball and let them play.
How are you dealing with the distraction of winning a WPIAL championship? I mean, obviously, right, wrong, or different. Hey, we're a distraction. You just talked about the fact that, that you were talking to the newspaper earlier there today. So, how do you compartmentalize, the fact that you've got to deal with so many people that now want your time, but yet making sure that you're getting yourself, your staff, and your team prepared to play a football game?
Yeah, I think being grateful for the fact that I even have the opportunity to talk to, people that, want to reach out and, just learn about the program and the things that we're doing. Yeah, obviously, there's only so many hours in the day, and you got to make sure that you're able to get done with the things that, have to get done. But at the same time, I'll never be, not grateful for the fact that, we're having success. And obviously with success, people are going to want to, talk and do stories. And, I'm thankful for that. It's something that comes with some of the success, especially obviously with a kid like Matt. You're going to be
Sure.
you're going to be getting a lot of questions and interviews, and things that if I could do the interviews and kind of let him just be a kid, then that's what I'm here for. Because I think that a lot of the times, with someone that is as high profile, whether it's right or wrong at this point in his career, only being a sophomore, you want that kid to actually be able to enjoy his high school career, not be worried about, all of the pressures of, the success that he's having. So I guess, whatever I got to do to, make sure that the program is being shown in the proper light, I'm happy with.
So speaking of the Fort Cherry program itself, one of the really cool things when you were on the show 4 years ago was you talked about just the whole history that your family has with the program, from your grandfather coaching there, your father coaching there, you coaching there. You have, from what I've heard, some other family members on the staff. So how cool was that to be able to experience this moment like with your family?
Yeah, it's unique. It's something that, uh, every Thanksgiving, perfect example, it's something that, will always come up, just it's natural nature that, we'll start talking about, oh, you guys remember the 2001 team, you guys remember the 97 team, or, just, hey, Dad, if you had to build a top 5 offensive lineman, in Fort Cherry history, who would it be? Just like that. That's kind of the way our family's always been. So to be part of history and be able to bring the first one home, is especially with our family members being on the staff and being able to share that with them was it was unique. It was special, a bit overwhelming at times. Just being perfectly honest, it's one of those things that you chase for a long time, and then it happens, and it's kind of like, now what? Just it's unique. It is, but we're happy to get to experience it for sure.
That's awesome. So I have one other question for you before we let you get out of here. We don't want to take too much of your time. One of the things I was most impressed by in the championship game, knowing that Southside Beaver ran this, wishbone offense, triple option, your line play on both sides of the ball was absolutely outstanding. And really, especially in the second half, was able to control things and keep them in check. So we like to, when we can, give shout outs to the guys up front and in the trenches on the show, because they don't get, the headlines and the stats as much. So can you go through your linemen and give them some shout outs, because they had a fantastic championship game. They've been great all year, but that was, the most recent one.
Yeah, it's funny, it's funny that it's starting to get noticed. Right before our WPIAL Championship game, local newspaper, once again, they came up and someone had the same thought. They said, Matt gets a lot of coverage. He gets a lot of, articles written about him. He said, but, it suddenly dawned upon me, someone has to be opening up these holes for him and, making sure that, he's being protected. So our offensive line just had an article that was written about them not long ago. And, our offensive line is an outspoken bunch, so I was a little bit nervous. Our one offensive lineman, Lou Ryan, he's the heart and soul of the team. There's no secret about it. He plays right guard for us and middle linebacker. He's a special kid. He's someone that was thrust into action during those struggling years. Whenever we were, he was a freshman whenever we first took over. He was forced to play some very significant downs against much bigger and older, teams, and he's gotten better and better each year. Braden Kirby plays beside him on the offensive line. He's our right tackle. Those two played together, side by side for the past 3 years. So they started, as sophomores together. Anthony Salvini is our starting center. He is someone who's going to be wrestling in college, definitely a wrestling first type kid, but I think that, wrestling and football, I've always said, go hand in hand. And I think that, his competitive edge and his physicality and his hand use and the things he's able to do really, really help him out and, keep us balanced in the middle there. Jonah Fender is our only junior who is on the offensive line, or only underclassman, I should say. He's a junior, started last year as a sophomore. And Ian Mulwiney is our left tackle, kid that has been starting for the past 2 years as well. He's also a senior. That group has just been working together for so long, and I think is a huge reason why we've been able to have some of the success we had. Whenever you have a team that you're constantly replacing offensive linemen and putting new kids into the system, you kind of have to go back to the basics a little bit, and having a veteran group up front has allowed us to be able to add a lot of things and even add things at halftime sometimes, because, I always end up saying, we're going to put this in because I know you guys can handle it, because that's a group that has been there and done that. They've seen it all. So they definitely deserve a lot of the attention as well.
Well, I tell you what, Coach, that's just fantastic. I guess you can understand why you're doing so well when you've got an experienced group of offensive linemen that are, leading the way for a very talented, group of skilled position guys. I'll tell you what, enjoy the moment, enjoy the week, and we look forward to seeing, how it all ends up there, Coach. Listen, best of luck moving forward, and, go get them.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
All right, Tanner. Thanks a lot. Just go ahead and exit out, and Ian and I will carry on. Take care now.
All righty. Take care. Thank you.
Thanks,
later.
Coach, and congrats again. All right. That was
Yeah,
great.
I mean,
did you see his face light up when he started talking about the linemen? Like, I love asking coaches about offensive linemen, because they all know, right? That's where it all starts on any team. And it's, something that, like Coach said, they don't get asked about a ton. And, it's always fun to see coaches, light up and react when you ask about the O-line.
Yeah, it is a lot of fun. And, look, I keep harping on this emotion thing, but, you really don't know what it takes out of you. And he kind of alluded to the fact that this is it's a grind, I mean, 14 games now, and look, everybody's physically beat up, but emotionally, how much is left in the tank for these guys to draw from within, to, impose your will on an opponent? I mean, that is emotion. That's, gut check time. And so obviously he knows that it's going to be a battle, but I tell you what, it was great to see him again. And I think we're going to be talking to him a lot in the coming years. What do you think?
Oh yeah, absolutely. He's one of the really good up and coming young coaches in the WPIAL. There's a lot of young coaches in the WPIAL now. The torch has kind of been passed from that
Sure.
older generation of the Jack McCurry's and Jim Renders and George Novak, so and even Bob Palko's.
Bob Palko, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of been passed to this younger generation of the, Matt Humbert won a WPIAL and a state title last year. And Coach Ladon up at Pine Richland has won 2 state titles at 2 different schools. And, I feel just fortunate that we've had an opportunity to talk to all these guys, Coach Garry included. And it's been really cool just to follow the Fort Cherry story.
I mean,
Coach Casper. Yeah.
It's, it's been it's so much fun for us, but I hopefully, and I believe because of the fans that watch the show, that it's enlightening for the fans too, because we take a little bit different approach than than a lot of podcasts or sports talk shows. And I think a much more geared from the fan perspective than any show out there. I believe anyway.
Yeah, and I'm, like I always said, I'm just a guy with a YouTube show.
Yeah,
I'm thrilled that people take the time to talk to us and tune into the show. And we love everyone that joins us every week and watches the show. And it's so much fun just to be able to talk football. So on that note, let's talk football.
Yeah, let's talk some more football.
Yes. So if you're joining us, you obviously know where to find us on YouTube and Twitter, Facebook, our rarely used Instagram account, as well as steelcityblitz.com, where I write all of my WPIAL preview articles.
And the 4,000 word articles too. Right?
I had a just a 4,000 word preview. There were 4 games, so 1,000 words. Not bad.
Good stuff.
Yeah. All right. So this was WPIAL Championship week at Acrisure Stadium. I guess we can't call it Heinz Field because Heinz Field is in Aliquippa now. Aliquippa winning their 20th all-time championship, the most of any WPIAL school. And then the rest of the champions, North Allegheny and Beaver Falls getting their 6th title, Bel Vernon getting their 3rd, and then Peters Township and Fort Cherry both winning their 1st WPIAL titles. Pretty cool for both of those schools, ironically, who both wear red and white. So, fun little sidebar there. So we talked about the 1A championship game, and I love this picture that I saw on Twitter because it's got not only the whole Fort Cherry team, but in the background there, the picture of the city of Pittsburgh on the Jumbotron above them is just an incredible setting there. Fort Cherry, just an outstanding performance to beat Southside Beaver. Came up with a couple really big plays in the first half of the game to take a 28-14 halftime lead, a big touchdown right before the half to go up 28-14. And I have a typo on this slide. My bad. Sorry, guys. This should say first championship for Fort Cherry, not for Union. Ignore that. Pay no attention to the man behind the curtain. Matt Seg, big performance. Shane Cornally also very good. And all around, congratulations to Fort Cherry. So let's talk about where they are now moving forward. So Fort Cherry will take on Red Bank Valley, the District 9 champions who defeated Cambridge Springs. On the other side of the bracket, we've got Steel High taking on South Williamsport. We'll talk a little bit about the other matchup, but let's take a look at the Fort Cherry Red Bank Valley matchup. These two teams are very similar statistically. Both of them averaging over 45 points a game, both of them holding opponents to about 12 points a game. Obviously, Fort Cherry playing in the WPIAL probably saw a little bit tougher competition than Red Bank Valley playing in District 9.
Yeah.
But that shouldn't take anything away. Let's not forget, 2 years ago, Red Bank Valley beat Bishop Canavan at this stage of the playoffs to go on and play in the state championship game where they ultimately lost to Bishop Guilfoyle. But nevertheless, Red Bank Valley's got a quarterback that's thrown for over 2,700 yards, who can air it out. 2 receivers with over 1,000 yards and more than 15 touchdowns, and then a pretty solid running back with 900 yards. So Fort Cherry is going to have their work cut out for them defensively to try and defend that passing game, which I think, when you look at the journey through the playoffs, we talked about this last week when we talked with Tom Reisenweber from the Erie Times News about the Cathedral Prep Peters Township matchup, that Peters Township had seen 3 teams in a row that like to run the ball and were ground and pound teams. Fort Cherry just saw a team that ran a wishbone triple option offense that they have to prepare for, and now has to go play a Red Bank Valley team who wants to throw the ball all over the yard, right? They have a 2,700 yard passer and 2,000 yard receiver. So they're going to have to dramatically play a different style of defense to what they played last week. Now, can they do it? Yeah. I mean, they just beat Bishop Canavan. They beat Bishop Canavan twice this year, and Bishop Canavan likes to throw the ball. So they have beat teams like this before. But I think that switch week to week of going from a run heavy team to a pass heavy team can be a challenge at this point in the season.
Yeah, it can be. And this matchup is the classic, matchup of who's going to impose their will on their opponent. Red Bank Valley, as you touched on, very much passing oriented. Fort Cherry, they want to control the tempo, at their pace. So, I talk about this a lot, but boy, whoever can score first in a matchup like this really has a distinct advantage, I think, over their opponent. And I think for Fort Cherry as well, I think it's important just for the psyche, okay, that they haven't been there before. Red Bank Valley, they have. I mean, this is not uncharted territory for them. So Fort Cherry getting on the board first, I think is going to be very important. Ian, what do you think?
I agree. And the one other thing I'll mention too is, Red Bank Valley up in New Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, Fort Cherry kind of in the, I guess, Washington County, southwest of, southwest of Pittsburgh. They're playing this game at Farrell, which is in Mercer County. So it's more of a neutral halfway between them site. Fort Cherry doesn't have to travel all the way up to New Bethlehem to play this game. Getting a more or less halfway in between kind of drive, I think will help both teams, or especially help Fort Cherry, that they don't have to make that long trip, that they can, go to a what is a District 10 site in Farrell. But yeah, I think you're right. For all of what Matt Segg's done through the air with his arm, they really do like to run the ball. And I mean, Matt Segg's run for 1,900 yards. Ethan Folletto's run for 1,100. So, I mean, you look between the two of them, they have 52 rushing touchdowns this year. So Fort Cherry does want to impose their will up front and control the line of scrimmage. But I like their chances too to slow down Red Bank's passing game. Red Bank's only loss this year was against Central Clarion, which is a 2A team. I think it was 35-14 was that loss. So, Red Bank can get slowed down offensively, and Central Clarion did it and kind of provided the blueprint. And nowadays, where everyone's highlights are on Huddle, where
you can find games.
Yeah, you can find games online a lot easier. It's not like back in the day where it was like, oh, we're going to exchange VHS tapes of our games, and you're lucky to get like 2 or 3 games worth of film.
Right. And now, by the way, that was from 2 years ago,
right. Now it's all out there and digital and available for people to go find. So and
even the players are putting out their own highlights.
Right. Yeah. I don't have any doubt that Fort Cherry will be very prepared for this game. Coach Garry will have his boys ready. And I think with a dynamic talent like Matt Segg, that's going to give Red Bank Valley something that they probably haven't seen all year, with a dual threat quarterback like that who can both run and throw. And some of the stuff he did in the WPIAL Championship game, on rollouts where it's like, okay, we're gonna roll out to one side like he's gonna run, and then pulls it up and throws downfield, or even just buying time in the pocket to find receivers getting open downfield. Hit Shane Cornally for a touchdown at the end of the first half in the WPIAL game. So, I really like Fort Cherry's chances, but this game definitely has the ability of turning into a shootout with the way these teams can score and the way Red Bank Valley can throw the ball. Even if they get behind, Fort Cherry's going to have to keep the pressure on.
And I think the most difficult thing for Red Bank Valley is that they're going to you touched on it there, dual threat quarterback. They're going to have to account for the quarterback every single play, not just one play or whatever. Every single play, they're going to have to account for the quarterback. That's basically taking a guy off their defense. Okay. So that I think is going to be the most difficult part for Red Bank Valley, is accounting for Matt Seg.
I agree completely. All right, so let's look at the state quarterfinal results and semifinal matchups here. Red Bank beat Cambridge Springs, Steel High beat Lackawanna Trail, and South Williamsport beat Cambria Heights. So for Red Bank Valley, this is just their second semifinal in school history. Their other one was that win over Bishop Canevin 2 years ago. The first semifinal for Fort Cherry. Steel High, obviously the powerhouse in the bracket, appearing in their ninth state semifinal, the defending state champions. And then South Williamsport, who's had a really strong year out of District 4, appearing in their first semi since 2014. But they're a pretty strong team. I'm very intrigued by this Steel High South Williamsport matchup.
As am I. I mean, we touched on that. Dave, Micah, and I a little earlier on a fresh set of downs, which everybody I highly suggest getting out there and listen to Dave and I break down some of the matchups there. Look, the PIAA is not giving Steel High any favors here. I mean, they're making them travel. They've logged more road miles than anybody. They had to be the number one seed coming in, and yet they've been all over the eastern half of the state, Lackawanna Trail, and now I think that they're up in Shamokin, which is not far for them. I mean, it's straight up 15, so maybe about an hour and a half. Certainly not going all the way to Lackawanna Trail, but a good neutral site game for South Williamsport and Steel High. I just like the fact that Steel High has been there before. I mean, they're shooting for their third title in 4 years. I mean, the pedigree, the poise, the athleticism. I think that that's something that South Williamsport hasn't faced all year, is the athleticism that presents itself, on the Steel High side of the field.
Yeah, should be a good one. Good set of semifinals here in 1A that should set up a good championship game. And I think this will be the first championship game at Cumberland Valley, right? Thursday.
Yep. 1 o'clock on Thursday.
Yeah. Okay. On to 2A, where we saw the biggest upset of the weekend. 10-seeded Beaver Falls beat Steel Valley in a rematch of last year's championship game. No typos on this slide. This one was just a defensive struggle throughout. Steel Valley, with Donald Barksdale, their running back, who had put up a ton of yards and touchdowns all year, he was able to get some yards, but Beaver Falls defense really locked it down. And for a while, Steel Valley had scored early, and I think it was 6-0 at halftime. And I was kind of wondering, like, is this game going to end like 6-0? And then, Beaver Falls scored to tie it at 6, and Steel Valley scored again to make it 12-6. And then Beaver Falls drove down the field at the end. Deshaun Anderson had some big catches on the final drive to set up a game-winning touchdown for Detalian Buford and the game-winning 2-point conversion, which, let's talk about this for a second. Detalian Buford in the playoffs for Beaver Falls. This dude has been incredible. Coming out of a number 10 seed, but over 100 yards in all 4 games. And look at the last 3 games. The game-winning 2-point conversion against Neshannock. That quarterfinal game, Beaver Falls was down 13-6. They blocked a punt, returned it for a touchdown, and then Detalian Buford scored the 2-point conversion that was the decisive points to win 14-13. Against Washington, Washington had 3 defensive touchdowns, and Beaver Falls still came out on top thanks to Detalian Buford scoring the decisive points. I think that was in the third quarter, but nevertheless, it was the decisive points in the game to get them up to 28. And then the championship game, with under a minute to play, Beaver Falls scores a touchdown to tie the game at 12, and Detalian Buford, for the 3rd straight game, this time with less than a minute left in the WPIAL Championship, scores a game-winning 2-point conversion. So that's just so cool that, one kid scoring 3 2-point conversions to win games to carry the 10th seeded Beaver Falls to the championship. And we touched on this last week, but double-digit seeds have never lost at Acrisure Stadium, Heinz Field, whatever you want to call it. Have to be careful.
That is an incredible statistic.
Yeah. As we know, Heinz Field is now in Aliquippa, but before Heinz Field moved to Aliquippa, it was Heinz Field in Pittsburgh. So double-digit seeds have never lost there since it opened in 2001. And almost as impressive as that, 3 of these schools are from Beaver County. Beaver Falls, Central Valley, and Rochester are all right there in the middle of Beaver County. So Beaver County schools from those, double-digit seeds.
All they got to do is get
well.
there. They just want to get to the championship game because they know they're going to win.
Well, hey, you know what? I would never bet against a Beaver County school in a championship game. Football's just different out there. I'm just saying.
Yeah, you're just saying.
Yeah. All right. So in the 2A bracket, Beaver Falls now moves on to face City League powerhouse Westinghouse, who defeated Farrell in what was a pretty close game for a while, and then Westinghouse pulled away. Southern Columbia survives against Bald Eagle, and then Dunmore took it to Camp Hill. So we'll talk a little bit more about those other teams in a bit, but to talk about this matchup, Beaver Falls taking on Westinghouse. This Westinghouse program out of the City League is just a great story. I mean, they made it to the state championship game last year for the first time ever, and what they've been able to do is just incredible, from a school in the City League to put together this kind of team and this kind of consistency that, their skill position players this year weren't necessarily all their starters last year. Some of them were playing, but they've got a guy in Kaishan Robinson who's got some D1 offers. Khalil Green's been a dual threat quarterback who's been able to do a little bit of everything. And I mean, this was just the top guys, but I could run down the list of, all the talented players that Westinghouse has. It's just an awesome story to see what they've been able to put together. And Beaver Falls now moving on. I believe they were the first team in WPIAL history to win a title after finishing with a 500 record in the regular season too, because they were 5-5 and won 4 straight games to get here. So awesome story for Beaver Falls. But Westinghouse, I really think Westinghouse wants another shot at Southern Columbia after the way the championship game went last year. So I would not at all be surprised to see Westinghouse win this one. No offense to Beaver Falls, because they've just pulled it off all the way through here and gone on a great run. But I think Westinghouse really wants that shot at Southern Columbia.
And this is the perfect, if the coach was, on the broadcast, it's like, the question coming out is like, how much emotion is left in the tank here? I mean, they've been playing with house money here for the last month. No one expected them to get this far. Do they have enough to get even further? Boy, that's a tall order after coming off of a win there at Acrisure Stadium. And obviously, Westinghouse there too. I mean, the athletes that that are gonna be thrown at those guys are not ones I don't think that they're accustomed to seeing too.
Yeah, Westinghouse is just loaded, and they're an awesome story. Whoever wins this game, it's going to be a great story one way or the other, because you're going to potentially get a Westinghouse rematch with Southern Columbia, or get a Beaver Falls team that was 5-5 now on a run all the way to the state title game. So it's going to be a great story either way. But for Beaver Falls, just awesome to win the WPIAL title. Westinghouse has kind of been in this state playoff mode for a while now, because being a City League school, they've had to play their way through a District 5 team, a District 10 team, a District 9 team. Not in that order. Actually, it was 9, then 10. But either way, Westinghouse has kind of been in playoff mode for a while now. And I think that they've got just an awesome roster that they've put together. And what they've been able to do, what their coaching staff's been able to do, and I've heard
they've created an aura about themselves is what they've done.
For a Pittsburgh City League school that, the City League traditionally has not done well in the state playoffs, this 2-year run from Westinghouse is incredible. And I remember hearing an interview last year with their head coach, who, like, if you have a chance to interview him or talk to him, he's just an awesome dude. But, he talked about building their program and building, young men and, developing these kids into adults and things like that. Just all the cool stuff you love to hear. So either way, whoever wins this game, it's going to be a great story. But looking at the bracket, Westinghouse, I think, really wants that rematch with Southern Columbia after the way the championship game ended last year. Southern Columbia, obviously the powerhouse team here that is still playing in 2A despite, winning 6 straight championships and not being forced up by the state. But yes, you know my thoughts on this, and for other people who want to know my thoughts, you can go back and watch some of our end of the year shows last year. But yeah, so Southern Columbia, which I think should be playing at least in 3A, if not 4A, probably 4A, is playing Dunmore, who really handed it to Camp Hill in their semifinal, and then obviously Beaver Falls and Westinghouse.
Yeah, Dunmore. I mean, unfortunately, Camp Hill ran out of gas. I mean, that was a team that was pretty much playing on emotion, a team with 5 losses. That was just playing so far above where they played all season. Southern Columbia, they've been doing it with defense and ball control. Beat a very good Bald Eagle, team. So I think it was a perfect game for Southern Columbia to obviously get back to that championship mindset. And, Dunmore, can they get past the aura of playing Southern Columbia? I mean, we talk about Westinghouse creating an aura. Hey, six-time defending state champion. That just is something that I think is going to be difficult for Dunmore to get past. And again, important Dunmore gets out to a lead early. If you see all the success that Southern Columbia has in these championship games, it's because they jump all over you so fast for special teams or a pick six or something like that. So Dunmore getting out fast and playing mistake-free football is a must for them to be in this game.
Yeah, and I think for Southern Columbia, they have not dominated their way through the playoffs like they have in past years. That was a 14-0 win over Troy, and last week against Bald Eagle was 18-8. So you're right, they've been doing it with defense, but they're not putting up the amount of points that we've seen them put up in the past. And so it's going to be interesting. Dunmore's coming off a 41-point performance against Camp Hill, but Southern Columbia, even though they probably should be in 4A, is still playing in the 2A bracket. So they're here for now, and we have to, analyze what's on the table in front of us.
Yeah, teams are playing smart against Southern Columbia this year, quite honestly. They're making them earn it. They're not, giving it up. And, like I said, it seems like, every single championship game early on, Southern Columbia is coming up with a big defensive play or a pick six or a touchdown on special teams. And the teams this year, thus far, at least in the playoffs, are really making Southern Columbia play and earn it. But to Southern Columbia's credit, they are earning it, okay? They're playing really good, solid, tough football.
Mm-hmm. All right, on to 3A, where Bel Vernon successfully defended their WPIAL title with a shutout victory over Avonworth. And you want to talk about doing it with defense. Bel Vernon just controlled the field position all game. They kept Avonworth pinned back deep in their own territory. Bel Vernon's kicking game was good, and then got a couple short fields and cashed it in. Braden Locks, who's an Eastern Michigan commit, playing quarterback for Bel Vernon, probably going to play tight end at the next level. Just had an outstanding game. And Quentin Martin, Bel Vernon's Penn State commit at running back, did a little bit of everything for him, but it was really the Braden Locke show that carried Bel Vernon to their second straight WPIAL title, third title in school history. Really cool to see for Matt Humbert to win another title and, get his name in that echelon of coaches that have won multiple WPIAL crowns now. But Bel Vernon all year has really been a team focused on winning that second straight state title, because they brought back, I think it was 21 out of 22 starters from last year's team, and really knew that this was something that they were capable of doing. So they have delivered every step of the way so far. Congrats to Bel Vernon on a dominant performance over a very good Avonworth team. I mean, this should not take away from how good Avonworth was this year. Avonworth was really good. They just ran into a freight train in Bel Vernon.
Yeah, they sure did. And quite honestly, almost under the radar. I mean, and the reason being is just what you talked about. The expectation was that Bel Vernon was going to get to this particular point. So everybody just pretty much, kind of ho-hummed here. Now people will stand up and take notice, over the next couple of weeks about these guys. And I tell you what, the experience of last year, you talked about the fact they were probably a year ahead of schedule winning a state championship. Now, pretty lofty expectation for them to repeat. Let's see if they can do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at some of the other results, Hickory defeating Central Martinsburg in the top half of the bracket. They'll face Bel Vernon in the semifinals. Northwestern Lehigh with a big win over Scranton Prep, and Wyomissing just ran all over Danville. I saw Wyo ran for
over 500 yards.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was a ton of yards.
Ridiculous number.
Yeah. So
we'll talk about those matchups a little later, right?
Yes. Yep. So let's talk Hickory and Bel Vernon. First playoff meeting between the two schools. Hickory from the Hermitage area up in District 10. They've got a dual threat quarterback in Xander Tellez, who can throw and run, and he really is kind of the catalyst for their whole offense. For Bel Vernon, obviously the two big stars of the show being their D1 commits and Quentin Martin, the Penn State commit, and Braden Locks, the Eastern Michigan commit. But beyond that, Bel Vernon did a great job this year of working other guys into the offense. Cole Doppelhauer, Anthony Cruz, Jake Gedico. They kept Quentin Martin fresh for the playoffs. Most of the regular season, Quentin Martin's stats were a couple of catches out of the backfield and, maybe 10 to 12 runs. And I mean, he was Quentin Martin, so he still put up, 70, 80, 90 yards on 12 carries, but sometimes 150. But nevertheless, they kept him fresh for this point in the year. And when you've got a kid that's that talented, that can do that many things, keeping him fresh, because they know, like you said, they now know what it takes to get to and win a state title. So having him be fresh on fresh legs for the state playoffs is going to be a tremendous asset to them. Plus, they found out what these other kids can do too, because they're not just giving Quentin Martin 300 carries. They're spreading it out and letting other guys share the load of the offense, and it's really benefited them. And really for Bel Vernon, it all starts up front in the trenches, and they've just been outstanding. And that was really where they made the difference against Avonworth. Avonworth just couldn't move the ball against them because Bel Vernon's defensive line was so good.
And look, this is a perfect example of, knowing that you're playing into, well into the season, in how Coach Humbert has, managed his team. You just touched on it, how, he's been playing for December the entire season, knowing full well that he was going to get there. Now, people can say, well, it might be a little bit cocky. No, you know what? That's smart football. And he's ready to unleash the hounds the next couple of weeks. Let's be serious. He's been holding back, but now he's got everybody fresh. He's got everybody at his disposal. He's got an experienced team. He's going after it. And I think we're going to enjoy watching it.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking at the semifinal matchups here, Hickory appearing in their fourth semifinal. Interestingly enough, all these teams have been to the semis before, and three of them have won state championships. Hickory won it way back in 1989. Bel Vernon, obviously the defending state champs, and Wyomissing with the 2012 title. So Northwestern Lehigh, the only semifinalist here that doesn't have a state title to their record. But I think that's pretty cool that you've got, 4 teams reaching this point that do have some tradition here. But none of them's been overly dominant, right? Third appearance for Bel Vernon, fourth for Hickory, third for Northwestern Lehigh, and even for Wyo, even though they've been to this point the last few years, this has been a recent run of success, but not necessarily a program like, say, a Southern Columbia that's won 15 state titles or whatever it is. That all these teams have been here before, but are also looking to write some new history for their schools, which is cool. I think this is also the only classification, maybe 6A also, but where the 4 semifinalists are all ranked in the top 10 of my WPIAL Blitz rankings. So, that's kind of cool too. Well, I had to throw those in there just to kind of keep track
of.
To
pat yourself on the back. Sure,
yeah.
Why not? And I think this Northwestern Lehigh Wyomissing matchup on the eastern side of the bracket. This is really a team that came in with not the lofty expectations, but has really peaked at the right time of the year. I know that I spoke to Coach Bob Wolfram on Thanksgiving morning, and hopefully everybody got an opportunity to watch that interview. If not, it's out there on YouTube. This is a team that, Coach Wolfram had no idea. He really didn't have much as far as expectations go. But boy, have they really turned it on. And the one thing that this team has, related to, well, it's not just like a ground and pound type of running game. This is an explosive running game that comes at you from multiple formations. Very high percentage offense. And Northwest Lehigh, they're going to do the same. They're a run-oriented team that's going to make you earn just about anything against them. So it's going to be a tremendous matchup. Probably going to be one of the fastest games you'll ever watch, I think. That clock's just going to run, but going to be very interesting.
Yeah. And in 4A, Aliquippa defended their title once again, winning the WPIAL Championship over McKeesport. Cam Lindsay just had an outstanding game. Cam Lindsay, a Pitt committed linebacker. He's kind of done it all for Aliquippa all year. Tyke Hayes and John Tracy have been the primary backs out of the backfield for the Quips, but Cam Lindsay's kind of flown a little bit under the radar, just dominant on defense with over 100 tackles this year, and just finds ways to make big plays in big games. He's a big game player. Had 2 rushing touchdowns in this one, returned a fumble for a touchdown, 11 tackles on defense, which against McKeesport's triple option attack, those tackles safe touchdowns, right? Every tackle you make, you got to get those guys down. And McKeesport had multiple guys that can beat you in multiple ways with the Spell brothers and Anthony Boyd. I mean, this was a very good McKeesport team that Aliquippa beat. And Aliquippa now winning their 20th WPIAL title, the most all time. Congratulations to the Quips on another awesome performance. Did it both on the ground and through the air in this one, with Quentin Good throwing 2 touchdown passes. Aliquippa is peaking once again as they get into the state playoffs. And we said all year, they really wanted that rubber match with Bishop McDevitt, where Aliquippa won 2 years ago, McDevitt won last year, and the Quips have had their sights set on getting that rubber match to see who wins the third one. It's just amazing what this program's been able to do. We say it all the time, a 1A size school forced up into 4A, and this year they won their 100th ever WPIAL playoff game. They've won their 20th WPIAL title against schools that are so many times bigger than them, and they just come out and execute over and over and over again, and did it in a bit of a different way this year. The last couple of years they did it because they had the trench dogs up front and those 300 pounders to just pave the way, and this year they did it with their skill position players, with Quentin Good throwing the ball, DeMarcus Walker and Harrison Walker at wide receiver, Tyke Hayes, John Tracy running the ball, and then Cam Lindsay just kind of doing a little bit of everything on offense. offense and just being the absolute anchor on the defensive side of the ball. Brandon Banks, can't forget about him going to Yale. First kid from Aliquippa going to Yale since I think the 1980s was what I read. So just overall an amazing story. And this group of skill position players for Aliquippa, I'd put them up against anyone in the WPIAL. I mean, if you played a 7-on-7 tournament of every WPIAL team, regardless of classification, I think Aliquippa would win it.
Wow, that's a pretty high regard, for this team. But no, you're exactly right. They've kind of done it a little bit differently this year, and that's important. Okay, you don't want to give the same kind of looks, especially getting in the state tournament where they've got a lot of preconceived notion on what kind of game that they like to play. But hats off to Aliquippa, just a hard-fought win against a really difficult opponent. You touched on the fact that it's not an offense that everybody sees very often. They played very disciplined defense, and they came away with a nice win.
Yeah, it was a great victory for them. And one of the cool things too is that after Aliquippa wins a WPIAL title, and because they do it so often, they have traditions of what they do after they win WPIAL titles. The kids go up into the stands and celebrate with the fans and with the community, and they take the trophy up into the stands and get to share it with their parents and the fans and community, and it's really cool. You can go on Twitter and find a bunch of videos and pictures of kids up there on the edge of the bleacher, or the edge of the railing by the stands with their parents, their family. It's really cool to see just the way the whole community celebrates when they win these.
Yeah, absolutely.
So looking at the rest of the results statewide, Selinsgrove thumped Juniata. Selinsgrove, the District 4 champions, Juniata out of District 6. And then Bishop McDevitt surviving a tight game against Mannheim Central, and then Dallas topping Bonner Prendy by a point. So a couple tight games over there on the eastern side of the bracket. But let's talk about this Aliquippa game first against Selinsgrove. These two teams on paper look kind of similar. Selinsgrove has a 2,000-yard running back. So he'll get a nice introduction to Cam Lindsay this week, the Pitt committed linebacker, as well as the rest of Aliquippa's defense. But Selinsgrove can also throw the ball with a 1,600-yard passer. They've got, an offense that can score, a pretty stout defense, and, they've had some tough games this year, beat a good Jersey Shore team in the District 4 championship game, and haven't been to this point for a while, but still a pretty good story for Selinsgrove. But Aliquippa is just an absolute force, and what they've got going with their skill position players and the way they can control the clock with their running game, the way they can beat you downfield and with their passing game, what Quentin Good's been able to do. I mean, as a multi-year starter at quarterback, I think 3-year starter, I believe. And anytime you have the senior leaders that have been starting for 3 years and have been to this point, right? Quentin Good has quarterbacked 2 teams that reached state championship games already in his high school career. So he knows what it takes to get a team back to the state title game once again. And obviously Aliquippa having all the history with a 9-3 record in state semifinal games is just incredible.
Can Selinsgrove survive the game shock of actually lining up and going toe to toe with Aliquippa? I mean, I don't think that they face the type of athleticism that's going to line up across from them this week. Not that they're not a good team and a skill, but the type of, like I said, athleticism that Aliquippa is going to bring to the table, to be able to play, you touched on, to play defense against these guys. Selinsgrove is very balanced. Maybe the most balanced team next to St. Joe Prep of any team, here in the semifinals. But they've not faced the likes of Aliquippa, this year. And I think that they've got a tall order. But if they can jump out to a lead and just kind of hang in there, you never know.
Yeah, this is gonna be an interesting one to see how it plays out.
And where are they playing at anyway? I mean,
Central Cambria, which is outside of Ebensburg.
Okay, all right. I thought it was out west.
It's sort of, I mean, that's not WPIAL territory, but yeah.
It's kind of, I'm sitting there like it's out in the middle of nowhere. It seemed like to me, and for both teams, it's not convenient. Sometimes you have to get, I mean, it's important. I know it's great to have a neutral site, but it's got to be a site that the fans can get to on a Friday night. I mean, come on.
Speaking of which,
okay.
sorry, I got to interrupt you here because I know we've got some Aliquippa folks that watch the show. So Aliquippa folks, when you're driving out to Central Cambria to go to this game, leave early and stop at Clem's Cafe in Blairsville, because
shameless plug there.
Shameless plug for the place that has a giant pig being barbecued on the roof, right? It's Clem's Cafe has some of the best like barbecued meat that I've had in my drives through Pennsylvania. So leave early when you're driving out. What's that, 22, I think it is, or 119 or whatever it is that goes through 119 that goes through Blairsville, right? When you're driving out through Blairsville, just after you pass it, stop at Clem's Cafe, have yourself some delicious barbecue, and then go enjoy your football game a little further down the road in Evansburg. And you can thank me later because Clem's is delicious.
Well, good stuff. I'll we'll have to, what we need to do is get Clem's to sponsor like our Cumberland Valley show. So we'll have to give them a call this week.
Yeah. I'll plug them without their sponsorship because it's just delicious food.
Sure. Yeah.
All right. So on to our look at our semifinalists. Aliquippa appearing in their 13th state semifinal, the third for Selinsgrove, Bishop McDevitt, and Dallas. All four of these teams have won state championships before, which is kind of cool. Dallas winning back in 93, Selinsgrove in 2009, and Aliquippa most recently in 2021, one of their four, and McDevitt having won two, being the defending state champs. So kind of a cool set of semifinalists here that all having state championships on their resumes.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I mentioned, I think that the Selinsgrove, just important that they, get out to a fast start and not make mistakes. I said on Fresh Set of Downs, and I say it right now, I still can't believe Bishop McDevitt won that game against Manheim Central. They scored like 15 points in like a minute, in 1 minute of the fourth quarter. Now, long touchdown pass, then the kickoff, and then the first play that Manheim Central then had, they fumbled it away. And then in the first play after that, Bishop McDevitt scored another touchdown. So 2 touchdowns literally within 4 plays. And, it went from 17-8 to 23-17. I mean, just an incredible turn of events. Bishop McDevitt, quite honestly, I don't want to say that they were fortunate. They really made their own, forced turnovers and what have you. But, gosh, they didn't do it with the offense. They did it with the defense. And if they can show up and have the same kind of defensive effort, which they'll need to against Dallas, I think that given a week, Coach Wechter is going to make sure that Rico Scott gets more touches than what he had last week. And I would expect that McDevitt will do better. But, they haven't played on the road too much, and in a long road trip over the last couple of years. This is the longest road trip that they'll have had, I think, in the last probably 3 years. So, I'm interested to see how they perform there. Dallas, they're going to perform very well, but nobody runs against this Bishop McDevitt defense. So I think it's going to make Dallas one-dimensional. That's how Bishop McDevitt beat Manheim Central, and I think that's how Bishop McDevitt will beat Dallas.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. And these two teams between Aliquippa and McDevitt have kind of been on a collision course all year for the state championship game. And we knew coming into the season that both of those teams were really looking forward to a rubber match. Dallas, a nice story, out of District 2 getting this far. But, I think what you talked about with, the emotions of everything, they survived a tough game against Bonner Prendy. It was 28-27.
Yeah.
Like, how much do they have left in the tank now to take on the powerhouse that is Bishop McDevitt?
No, you're exactly right. And Bishop McDevitt, they're trying to prove everybody wrong now. That's not what you want. That's not what you want.
No,
So,
you never want an angry team heading into the playoffs.
No, you don't want an angry team with the talent that Bishop McDevitt has, on there, where people are doubting them or whatever like that. Come on. And our buddies at Go MVP, thanks for your support all season long here. It's getting that time of year where, now that your season is over, you got your highlights. What you need to do is get signed up with Go MVP. Let them take your highlights and get them in front of college coaches. That's what they do. They create your online persona and manage it for you, and they'll definitely do well in getting you offers. If you want to play at the next level, then you need to get with Go MVP. The one thing that I know, and Ian, you know it just as well as I, all I've been seeing is this avalanche of players on college football in the transfer portal. I've never seen it. And those are what those college kids are what high school kids are competing with for college scholarships to play at the next level. It's tough, but put more of the odds on your favor, and that's get with Go MVP. Let them work with your social media. Let them get you in front of college coaches, and don't take mine and Ian's word for it. Just go to gomvb.com/SSM special and see what they're doing for their clients. You'll be amazed and you'll sign up right away.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about the transfer portal, that makes things even tougher for the kids out there trying to find scholarships at this point in time. But it also potentially opens up opportunities as kids start to leave these college programs and say, hey, I'm going to go somewhere else and enter the portal, that these schools are now going to potentially have scholarships available to go out and offer people. So you're going to want to put your best face forward on social media for those college coaches out there looking for kids to fill those gaps.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword, but definitely Go MVP is a great way to get your highlights. And look, they're a public relations firm. They're going to put you in a positive light, and they're going to get you in front of college coaches. 91% of college coaches are doing their recruiting online. You just got to get on Go MVP, and they are regardless of like the lack of it on the WPIAL Blitz show Instagram, Go MVB's Instagram work is just outstanding. So check them out.
Yeah, don't come to me for Instagram advice. Go to them.
I've been doing a little bit better on Instagram. So
I am terrible at it. All right, on to 5A, where we had state quarterfinals happen. The WPIAL Championships in 5A and 6A happened last week. Peters Township took it to Cathedral Prep 33-14. They will face Cocalico out of District 3, who is appearing in the semifinals for the second straight year. And then Strathaven winning District 1 over Chester, and Imhotep Charter defeating Delaware Valley, really pulling away in the second half after kind of a close first half in that one. Looking at this Peters Township matchup against Cocalico, I was surprised when I looked up these stats, and I was like, wait, does Cocalico really have 4 players with over 700 yards and double-digit touchdowns? And yeah, they do. They just want to run the ball. They're going to run and run and run and run. And for Peters Township, we talked about this earlier in the show, they've now faced, I'm going to go back to the bracket here, they faced a Moon team that was a Wildcat team. They faced a Peters Township, or they are Peters Township. They faced a Pine Richland team who was a Wildcat offense. As we knew from talking with Tom Reisenweber from the Erie Times News, Cathedral Prep was a run-heavy team. So this is going to be the fourth run-heavy team in a row that Peters Township is going to face. And Peters defense has been able to shut down all three of those teams so far. So they are battle tested against run heavy offenses, and we'll see what they can do against Cocalico. I think for Peters, if they get up by a couple touchdowns, especially early in the game, it's really going to change the dynamic of things if they can force Cocalico out of their comfort zone and make them put the ball in the air, because Peters has a really good secondary, and Peters defense has actually scored a bunch of touchdowns this year too. For a while this season, Peters defense had scored more points than they had given up, which was crazy that they had that many defensive touchdowns. So it's going to be interesting to see if Cocalico can actually run the ball, because if they can't, this is going to be a long night for them.
They haven't had any issue imposing their will on anybody other than everybody scratches their head of the fact that they lost like their first game of the year with Warwick, and I think Warwick only won one other game the entire season, so which was kind of strange. But they've taken on all comers and they've been very effective. And I think obviously running the football, everybody kind of looks at, how they run the football is why they're successful. I think it's on the defensive side of the ball of why they're successful, because they're holding their opponents, which allows them then to impose their will on their opponents on the offensive side of the ball. And Aaron Longenecker, my God, he's the Swiss Army knife. I mean, he does everything. I mean, on defense, offense. Yeah, I think that, it isn't so much their Cocalico running game as much as it is the Cocalico defense that allows them to run the football. And I think that this is going to be the most difficult test all year, obviously, for Cocalico. And how are they going to control that Peters Township offense? Because it is prolific. And I think that that's the key to the game, is not whether Cocalico can run the football, it's whether Cocalico can stop Peters' offense.
Yeah, because Peters has put up a bunch of points, and I don't know if they've seen a passing game like what Peters Township brings to the table. I put Carter
they haven't. They really haven't. Cocalico has not seen any, I don't think any offensive team the likes of Peters Township during this season anyway.
Yeah, and Peters can be incredibly balanced. I put Carter Shanafeld's name on here as a wide receiver, but he kind of does everything for Peters too, especially on defense. He's their kicker and punter and cornerback. But also they've got 4 receivers that can all beat you in any way.
Yeah.
As well as 2 running backs in Vinny Sarcone and Preston Blair, and a sophomore quarterback in Nolan DeLucia, who can just fling it all over the yard. So Peters can plug in pretty much any player at any position. Like, they're not reliant on just one guy making plays. Any game, any guy could be the guy that steps out. And when you have that many weapons, it's hard to defend.
Yeah, it is. But I like Cocalico's back end pass defense. It's been effective all year. I've seen him a couple of times, as well as obviously keeping close track on them. I mean, I was out there talking to Coach Stroll on a Thanksgiving morning. So, it's only about 15, 20 minutes from my house. And, but, I've been close to the program over, the last couple of years here. But that defense, they have to stand up to that Peters offense. Obviously, if they don't, well, then it doesn't matter whether they can run the football or not.
Yeah, that's true. And like we said, especially if Peters can get out to if they get up by 3 scores, I think the game's almost over at that point. Well, and if you take Cocalico's running game out of it, I don't think they've thrown it much all year. So and maybe yeah.
Coach Stroll always likes to talk about that fact there too. We can throw the football too. And they have. They just haven't connected much with them. They can
But like,
throw it.
yeah. But like we talked about before, is this the time of year? I mean, yeah, you gotta, like we talked about with Coach Garry, you gotta, ride the horse that got you here, but sometimes you got to do something a little bit different too, right? In the WPIAL Championship game, Fort Cherry ran a reverse to their wide receiver and had him throw a touchdown pass. It was like that Philly special play that the Eagles ran in the Super Bowl. So, sometimes you got to do different things this time of year to be successful.
You got to break tendency somehow. I mean, and something that you may not have, put out there on tape. You got to do something different there that, you know, could you have to use your tendency to your advantage, and that, if they're doing a good job scouting, you know what they're going to do based on how you're going to run that play. So just do it a little bit differently and just run the same play. And I think that that's what Cocalico will do a little bit of as well. They did a bit of that last year against Pine Richland. Unfortunately, they turned the ball over. They got behind early, and that was kind of the death knell. But I see them being a little bit imaginative, especially early on. And I like when teams do that, because then it puts the thought process in your opponent's mind, and it's going to keep guys at home more rather than maybe be aggressively pursuing plays. So,
yeah, it'll be interesting to see how these two teams approach this game. And for Peters, obviously, this is their first state semifinal after winning their first WPIAL title in school history. Cocalico's been here a couple times in recent years, lost at the semis in 2019 and then last year to Pine Richland. Then on the other side, we've got a Strathaven team and an Imhotep charter team that have both been to this stage quite a bit over their history. Strathaven beat Chester to get here, and Imhotep had a close first half against Del Val and then pulled away from them late.
Yeah, it's I think that Imhotep has been all business this year, from watching him the first week hang 87 on a team to methodically going down and scoring the winning touchdown with late in the game against a Roman Catholic to pull out that big District 12 championship. They've been laser focused on righting the wrongs of the last two state championship games. And it goes back all the way to the spring and 7-on-7 when I would see them out there practicing and what have you. So it's all business with these guys. Sometimes you get these teams and they do a little showboating and yada yada yada. That's not Imhotep Charter. They act like they've been there before, and they've got obviously something to prove. And boy, just get out of their way. That's all I got to say. They are going to run you over. They are going to play some good football. Unfortunately, Strathaven's the one in their way not right now, but man, that is going to be one heck of a game. It's being played at Coatesville. I mean, just a great venue. But I like Imhotep in that game.
Yeah, and for Strathaven, from at least what I've seen, they've kind of survived a couple games and won some close games just to get to this point too.
Yeah.
That you have to wonder how much of a toll that's taken on them. They even in their second round game, it was 26-21 over Upper Dublin. Then it was 14-12 over Springfield Delco. Then it was 28-20 to beat Chester in the District 1 championship game. So, I mean, they've had 3 straight 1-score games just to get to this point. And at some point, does either you're battle tested and know how to win close games and can keep pulling it out, or you just don't have a whole lot left in the emotional tank and you just run out of gas.
Yeah, it's gonna be hard. I mean, anybody we've talked about it all year long that it was kind of like this unstoppable force, Imhotep Charter, that just was kind of maneuvering their way through a regular season with an ultimate objective of a state championship.
Yep. Yeah. And speaking of forces, St. Joe's Prep mercy ruled Nazareth. And got another win and advanced to the semifinals again. They'll take on Central Bucks South, who is somewhat of an upset story out of District 1. North Allegheny just pounded Erie McDowell. They just ran away from them in the first half. Harrisburg won an absolute battle with Manheim Township. Manheim was up early in that game, I believe, and then Harrisburg stormed back and won it in overtime to set up what I think might be the best game in the state this week of the semifinal between North Allegheny and Harrisburg. And looking at these two teams, I mean, they're almost carbon copies of each other from what you see on paper. Both averaging over 40 points a game, both holding opponents right around 17 a game. Both of them have a dual threat quarterback that can pass and run. Both of them have a very strong running back, a talented wide receiver. They're good in the trenches. North Allegheny's defensive end, Daniel Sellers, has just been like a one-man wrecking ball the last couple of weeks coming off the edge. And to me, this is the game of the week in the state because these two teams just look so similar to each other. Harrisburg obviously being the runners up last year, and being the runners up 3 times in the last 7 years. They've gotten 2 state championship games, but haven't won one yet. And North Allegheny, they lost to State College in the quarterfinals last year, came back this year, beat Central Catholic in that WPIAL Championship game, and were able to carry that momentum through last week to beat McDowell. And now I think they're back on the horse, right? We talked about how much emotion gets expended, right? They used up so much emotion to beat Central Catholic in that game, but they didn't have that hangover. They got right back on it and just pounded McDowell last week. So now I think they're back in the groove, which sets up a really good matchup against Harrisburg.
Yeah, and Harrisburg, I tell you, a physical battle against Manheim Township. I mean, avenged their only loss of the regular season. And look, in my mind, this game could be like 52-51. I mean, or it could be 17-16. I mean, depending on, how it shows up. I expect, though, kind of a wide open kind of game. There's far too much talent, I think, on the offensive side of the ball for both teams. So who's going to just play enough defense to hold their opponent? I tell you what, Harrisburg's back end defense, I'd be surprised if North Allegheny has played, kind of a secondary that Harrisburg can throw out there, and they can throw out, a pretty good pass rush as well. So I don't know. I think there's just enough defense on the Harrisburg side of the ball, but North Allegheny, wow. I mean, just score, and more scores. So I don't know. I think it could be 52-51 for whoever's going to win, but I can't disagree with it that this is going to be the best game of the weekend here in the PIAA tournament.
Yeah, I'll go 34 or no, wait. I'll go 31-24. I think it's a little bit lower scoring. I think both I think the defenses have something to say, but ultimately the offenses break through. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if this game was like 7-7 at halftime, right? That if it takes the teams a little while to kind of figure each other out and then they just go on a scoring spree in the second half.
Yeah. Well, that's why we play the game. I wish I could just clone myself. I talk about that all the time. I mean, I wish I could clone myself. I mean, the games that I'm at this week, Friday night, for Eastern PA football, I'll be covering the Bishop McDevitt Dallas game, and then my buddy Bob Long and I will be calling, the St. Joe Prep CB South game on Saturday afternoon. So I get a double dose of games. I wish I could be, to others there. I think that the games in Mansion Park are going to be just incredible. as they always are. And,
Well, this is the
it's,
classic West final at
yeah,
Altoona that, we've had for decades now. Yeah. This would be a good one.
yeah,
You're right. You got the setting. It's got everything. It's got that.
yeah,
Yeah. Mansion Park at Altoona, 6A semifinal. Yeah.
yeah.
All right. So since you're covering that St. Joe's CB South game, I'll let you talk about that one.
It's, St. Joe Prep, they, continue. The one thing that people just don't talk enough about, St. Joe Prep, forgetting about the talent that they have, the raw talent, the execution that they have, and I think that the coaching, really, sets it apart there. Central Buck South, you're touching on the fact that they've never been here before, and you're going up against a team that it's just kind of automatic when they get to this particular point of the season there. So it's going to be really hard for CB South, I think, to break through. St. Joe Prep, they've continued to improve. And what they do is they just jump out on you really fast and then just kind of like put it, switch into glide for the rest of the game, and but I don't think that they're going to do it at this particular point. I think that they're going to jump out quick and they're going to put their foot on somebody's throat. And I think they're putting the foot on the throat of Central Buck South.
Yeah. And I think for St. Joe's Prep, we've talked about it before on this show, and last year on our championship preview show, we interviewed St. Joe's Prep's head coach. And he was a great interview. And, the question I asked him kind of pointedly was, how much does winning the Pennsylvania state championship mean to you when you have kids that come from such a wide range of areas? And, he said, this is always our goal, is winning the state title and being known as state champions. And I think now for them being one step away, I think you're right. I think it's just, they're just going to go out and pound CB South because they're one step away from the championship game, which is where they expect to be every year.
And look, this senior class didn't win when they were sophomores. Okay,
they won last year.
But... Well, sure, but they won last year. But I'll tell you what, we actually did speak to Tim last week on Fresh Set of Downs. You really need to listen. Why they are the way that they are now is it wasn't that long ago that they were just another face in the crowd. And so listen to exactly, what he had to say about that. It's very enlightening. And I found it, the fact that they appreciate everything that they earn, and they still feel that, they're earning these championships by all the hard work that they're putting in, and all the hard work, not only for the players, but the coaches and the school as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's out there on demand. Everybody should take a listen to the interview that we had with Tim Roken last week on Fresh Set of Downs.
Cool. Yeah, we'll try. I'll find that and repost it on my Twitter account.
Yeah,
too, so
you really,
yeah,
you should. I think it's very good. I mean, yeah, I think it's definitely worth a listen.
Cool. All right. So looking statewide at our 48 semifinalists across districts, District 5, once again, not represented. Last year, District 10 was not represented in the semifinalists. And last week when we talked with Tom Reisenweber from the Erie Times News, he was a little uncertain if District 10 would get a semifinalist this year, but they did. And ultimately, it was District 6 in the middle of the state that got shut out of the semifinals. So really 5 and 6 there in the middle of the state, both getting shut out from the semifinals, is kind of interesting. The WPIAL putting 6 teams into the semis, 1 from each classification, and District 3 putting 5 teams in. So it should be interesting to see. We've got a couple of District 7 against District 3 matchups here, but a couple other ones we might meet for state titles. So we'll see how it all plays out.
Yes, we will. Good
All right.
graphic there.
So one other thing, there's a lot going on this slide. But the image on the left I took straight from the PIAA's handbook. So that's why it looks messy, because I didn't create it. But it's basically the success formula and whether or not it means a team will have to move up. So if a team is going to be forced up into a higher classification, they have to have both the success factor and have a number of transfers as defined by sport. I think it's 3 or more in football. And obviously the transfer number is not public information, so I don't know what it is. But just looking at the success formula, because that's something I can figure out, it's 1 point if you reach the round of 16, 2 points if you reach the quarterfinals, 3 if you reach the semifinals, and 4 if you reach the championship game. Winning a state championship does not get you any extra success points. So a number of teams are actually already above that 6-point threshold, where if they have enough transfers, could potentially get forced up into a higher classification next year. So in 5A, Imhotep and Cocalico above the line. 4A, McDevitt and Aliquippa. 3A, Bel Vernon and Wyo are already above the line. If Northwestern Lehigh beats Wyo, then Northwestern Lehigh would also be above the line. Southern Columbia, obviously, who should be playing in 4A at this point, is still in 2A somehow. Westinghouse also in 2A, and then Steel High in 1A, all above that 6-point over 2-year total. But I think what this graphic also shows is that, a lot of teams that reached the state championship or that reached the semifinals last year are back at this stage this year already. And are above that line. So we'll see how those transfer numbers come in and how many of these teams potentially get forced up into higher classifications. Imhotep potentially having to move up into 6A and play against the likes of St. Joe's Prep would certainly be an interesting story.
That would be interesting.
Yeah. McDevitt
that would turn District 12 into a completely different dynamic if it wasn't if it was a battle rather than a coronation for a District 12 title between St. Joe Prep and Imhotep.
Yeah. And that potentially could open some things up for the Roman Catholics and those other teams of the world in 5A to, actually have a chance after the way Imhotep has kind of dominated it over the last few years.
They dominated it. They made it to the championship game. I wouldn't consider it to be dominated.
No, Imhotep's dominated District 12 in the last few years is what I'm saying.
They have. I mean, I don't think that, one of the things, when you went back to that one graphic, they've had one state championship. It was in 2015. That's a long time ago. And, look, they get to that particular point, but I would consider an element of dominance to be, multiple state championships and what have you. And have they been a very good team? They certainly have. Have they been a dominant team? I wouldn't call them a dominant team by any stretch of the imagination.
Well,
this could take days and cost thousands.
No, all right. I'll leave it at this. I'll leave it at this then. Imhotep has won 9 out of the last 11 District 12 championships in the classification they've played in. Sure. And I wasn't saying that. Maybe I should have clarified. I was saying Imhotep has dominated District 12. I wasn't saying Imhotep has dominated the state. So I feel like if you win 9 out of 11 championships in your district, you're dominating your district. So,
and it is tough. Remember, up until recently, they've been in, they've continued through the success formula to move their way up. The Philadelphia, District 12, their predominant competition in their classifications have been the Philadelphia Public League, which we know really isn't, it's not the Philadelphia Catholic League. Now this year, they've had to butt heads, or the last two, or this last cycle, butting heads with, Philadelphia Catholic League teams. But typically the Philadelphia Catholic League teams are all 6A and above. Roman dropping down because of enrollment, gives them some competition. Okay. But, yeah, it's going to be, it will be interesting to see. And then, there's a lot of dynamic going on in the Philadelphia Catholic League, along with the success formula, that could really throw, District 12 classifications and football championships just for a loop in this next cycle.
Yeah, it will definitely be an interesting one to watch. We may have to do like an off-season show once the classifications get announced, just to talk about what the new alignments are
and success formula and stuff.
Yeah.
Whenever that comes into, usually there's they get a ruling, and then there's an appeal, and then there's like an anointment or something. I don't know.
Yep. So like we said, this is only half of the formula. The other half is the transfers. We don't know that half, but this is the half we do know of the teams that are above the line.
Yep.
All right. So thank you all for joining us. If you have enjoyed watching us and listening to me talk, you can listen to me talk more about the Pittsburgh Steelers this time. My Steelers podcast, the Steel City Blitz Show, is on Thursday nights on YouTube. Will be Thursday night this week, but next Thursday, the Steelers Place will probably be Tuesday night next week. But you can check out the Steel City Blitz Show. And Bruce has mentioned his Fresh Set of Downs show, and you should also check that out. But next week, in preparation for the state championship game, we will have a show featuring both the WPIAL Blitz Show and the Fresh Set of Downs show to preview the state championships at Cumberland Valley. So tune in next Monday at our normal time, 9:15, give or take, for our show combining the WPIAL Blitz Show and the Fresh Set of Downs show to preview the state championship games.
Yeah, I tell you what, I'm really looking forward to that. I know that talking with Dave Micah on Fresh Set of Downs, we did that podcast a little earlier this evening when I was there went the tree.
Oh, the Christmas tree fell over.
That's all right, tree fell. It's pretty windy out here today. I'm surprised it actually lasted that long. It made it through 2 podcasts and almost 2 full podcasts. But anyway, Dave and I talked about that. We'll have Bob Wong on as well. Bob will be calling the championship games for NFHS Network. Dave and I will be covering the championship for Eastern PA football. One of these years, we got to get you out there, man, for like, just like a holiday weekend of football out at the, the championships there at Cumberland Valley.
Yeah, that would be a lot of fun. Maybe, someday we'll be able to figure it out. So
yeah,
looking forward to next week's show. Thanks everyone for tuning in and joining us. We appreciate all the support from everyone. We had Mayor Walker from Aliquippa stopped in the chat this week, and had some other folks as well. So thanks to everyone. We appreciate all the support. Thanks to Coach Garry from Fort Cherry. Congratulations to them on winning their first ever WPIAL championship. And, had 2 schools, Fort Cherry and Peters Township, both win their first WPIAL titles this year, which is a pretty cool story. Love to see those teams kind of break through and get those championships, and great for those coaches as well. You could just tell how happy he was, and that was an awesome interview. And it's really cool for me too. Like I say, I'm just a guy with a YouTube show, right? But to kind of be able to talk to these guys, we talked to him 4 years ago, and follow their journey as they go through their coaching trajectories and all that, and everyone that's been so gracious with their time all year. We appreciate it. And thanks everyone for tuning in. So we'll have our state championship preview show next week, and we will have a recap show the following week, and that will probably be it for the WPIAL Blitz show for this year. We may come back sometime in January for a random off-season show once the new alignments get announced, if we want to talk about them. But it's been a lot of fun. It's been a good year.
And it's gone so fast. I mean, that was we were saying that on the field, talking with Coach Hahn for Manheim Central and Coach Wechter for Bishop McDevitt. before the game last week, we were all just shaking our heads that we couldn't believe that it's gone by so fast. But all I can say, Ian, is it's just an incredible honor to share the podcast with you and with the coaches that we get and the fans that watch. We really appreciate it, and we're very happy that they, tune in. And hopefully next week, as we kind of close out, this season with our preview show here at Cumberland Valley, interested to see how the fans of both shows, stop by and everything else. So I'll be honest with you, it is a different group that watches each particular show. I can tell you that.
Yeah, I'm continually amazed and honored that like coaches watch our show. Like Coach Garry was telling us before the show, he's like, "Oh yeah, I've watched your show all year." I was like, it amazes me that these guys who are head coaches at high schools that have so many other things they can do with their time choose to spend an hour and a half, 2 hours, however long I talk for, listening to me talk about football. And I love talking football, but it amazes me that they, tune into the show. And we certainly appreciate everyone that tunes in and that interacts with us on Twitter and Facebook and everywhere else. It's great. We really appreciate it.
Everywhere I go, the coaches are always asking me, are you still out on the deck? I mean, there are two things that they always ask me. It's like, what workout was it today? And are you still doing the podcast out on the deck? And so if people can remember the fact that, I go to the gym in the morning and freeze my butt off doing podcasts and, after Thanksgiving, I'm okay with that. Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, all right. Well, listen, that about does it for this week. Thanks, Ian. And we'll get all prepared here as soon as possible for the games here this week, and then have our show next Monday night at 9:15. So for Ian McMeans, my name is Bruce Badgley. Thank you so very much for watching the WPIAL Blitz.